Now available for the first time in paperback. Stop Simping in the Workplace. Men, learn what you need to know in order to protect your job from workplace predators with Stop Simping in the Workplace. Available in paperback at online booksellers everywhere. Recently, the Gynocentric Godzilla consumed several prominent black men. And with the destruction of these prominent black men's careers comes a plan by male white supremacists to change the narrative of this sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations argument into a black brute argument. Unfortunately, this attempt to try to change the narrative is going to be destructive to men in general. And the reason why it's going to be destructive to men in general is because many of these white supremacist males do not understand how dangerous this gynocentric Godzilla is or how much of a threat it is to all men in general. Now, recently we had your Russel Simmons, who was the head of Fat Farm, forced to step down due to sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations. And just a couple of days ago, we had your Tavis Smiley, who had his television show terminated and his contract ended by PBS based on sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations. And with the termination of these two men from their jobs due to these sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations, we see white supremacists trying to reframe the argument of sexual harassment and sexual assault and make it back to be a black brute narrative once again. And the reason why these white supremacists want to turn this into a white black brute narrative once again is because the original plan was to malign and destroy the image and reputation of Bill Cosby, because the original plan of this whole campaign by white supremacists was to destroy and malign the image of Bill Cosby by bringing out these 40 and 50-year-old sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations against Bill Cosby from these old females from 30 and 40 years ago. And they hoped by using these allegations, people would turn against Bill Cosby. Unfortunately, the whole campaign to malign Bill Cosby has backfired, and the trial that they had to imprison Bill Cosby for sexual assault failed to do so when it led to a hung jury. However, white supremacy wound up with itself exposed due to their attempt to go after Bill Cosby. And the way that white supremacy got exposed was this. Your white supremacists thought, oh, these females would win a criminal conviction against Bill Cosby in court, then go for a civil case where they would take all his money. However, women don't like to work, and Bill Cosby was making them work. Meanwhile, Roger Ailes got caught up in a sexual harassment scandal, and he had to pay Gretchen Carlson a $27 million settlement. And Bill O'Reilly got caught up in a sexual harassment scandal, and he had to pay a cash settlement as well. And as both of these men stepped down from their positions and paid cash settlements, this led to hypergamy kicking in with many of these white females and these white feminists. And instead of them going after the 400 some odd million dollars Bill Cosby had, they decided to go after the billions of dollars that white men like Roger Ailes and Bill O'Reilly had. And as they went on, they decided to go for the bigger dollars of guys like Roger Ailes and Harvey Weinstein instead of going after Bill Cosby's small change. And as they continued to do this, what evolved was a feminist lizard became a gynocentric Godzilla. And as this gynocentric Godzilla began to grow, it destroyed your Harvey Weinstein, it destroyed your Charlie Rose, it destroyed your Matt Lauer, and it destroyed your Al Franken. But attempts were made by white supremacy to reframe the argument, starting with John Conyers. Now, John Conyers was an old black congressman, and what white supremacists wanted to do was reframe the argument back to that black brute argument by making allegations that he sexually harassed some white women and paid off some white women. And that was the start of them trying to reframe the argument. Then they tried to bring in Russel Simmons and say that he did some sexual harassment and sexual assault, also in an attempt to reframe the argument. And with the firing of Tavis Smiley comes, again, another attempt to reframe the argument that black men are sexual perverts, sexual deviants, and that black men are the ones who participate in all this sexual harassment. Unfortunately, again, the cover has been exposed on white supremacy, and most people now see the truth about how sexually deviant most of these movie producers like Harvey Weinstein are, how these guys like Matt Lauer are sexually deviant, and how many others, like your Charlie Rose and many of these white men, are really the bigger sexual deviants than any of the allegations thrown at black men. But the bigger picture as it relates to this whole mess is getting lost. And it's getting lost because your white supremacists don't know how dangerous this gynocentric Godzilla truly is. Because this gynocentric Godzilla is a dangerous creature. And this gynocentric Godzilla, if these guys would ever take a minute to get out of white supremacy and see it the way MGTOW see it, is a serious threat not just to black men or white men or Hispanic men or Asian men or even Muslim or Christian men or conservative or liberal men. It is a threat to men in general because it is a threat to men because Gynocentric Godzilla hates all men, and the Gynocentric Godzilla wants to take power over all men. And this is something that most of these white supremacists don't understand. This Gynocentric Godzilla wants to take control over the country through the position of the victim. It hopes to use that position of the victim to gain control over the overall society because it believes if it makes these allegations of being a victim and people keep conceding to it, it can get more and more power. And with most of the population being women and most of the jobs being in the hands of women, the gynocentric Godzilla has tremendous economic power, and now it wants to turn that victim position to get itself to gain political power. And this is something that goes over the heads of your white supremacists who are too busy trying to destroy black men to see the threat that white women have become with this gynocentric Godzilla, and that this Godzilla is out to destroy all mankind. Because if the country remains on this position of the victim, the country is going to be weak. Because then the country will be at the mercy of these females who will continue to drive everything down deeper and deeper to the bottom, and we will never rise to any sort of standard whatsoever. Because when it comes down to the victim is a powerless person, and it uses this position because it gets them attention, and it gets them attention because they are getting their needs met by someone who is dictating to them. And what's happening with this Godzilla is it doesn't know what it wants, but all it likes is getting all of the attention it is receiving, and it likes getting this money and this attention that it's getting, and that's a threat to everyone. Now, when it comes down to this gynocentric Godzilla, as I see it, men have to start putting their foot down when dealing with this monster and its allegations of sexual harassment and sexual assault, because this witch hunt, as I see it, has gone way too far. When it comes down to this witch hunt, we now have females trying to use this to take control of the country. And if men don't step in and set a boundary, they're not going to have a country left to function. Now, when it comes down to this gynocentric Godzilla, men are going to have to start fighting back. And how can they fight back? This is very simple. When it comes down to this gynocentric Godzilla, you have to understand two things. One, you are innocent until proven guilty. Under the United States Constitution, this is your right guaranteed under the law. And most men these days, and most business owners these days, are reacting emotionally to these females instead of responding constructively to them by saying, this man is innocent until proven guilty, and your allegations are not founded or proven unless they are proven in a court of law. When it comes down to these females who are a part of the gynocentric Godzilla, they get off on the attention that they get and the fact that they can try these cases in a court of public opinion. However, as an American citizen and as a man, you have a constitutional right to be innocent until you're proven guilty, and you have a constitutional right to due process under the law. As I see it, most of these men need to start taking legal action whenever these females make allegations and say two things. One, if you were sexually assaulted, show me a recent police report. Not something from 40 years ago, not something from 20 years ago where the statute of limitations has run out. Show me a recent police report where you have critical evidence to prove this man did this. And then we will take this to court and then present it to a jury of the man's peers, and they will evaluate whether or not a crime has been committed. And in a civil affair, you will have to come in and again show some evidence that there was some sort of action done to you or some sort of harm done to you in order to get some sort of civil restitution. And these are ways men can shut down these females in their attempts to try to sway public opinion, because it should not be a case of public opinion leading to these men losing their jobs based simply on allegations, because that's not what the United States was founded on. The United States Constitution was founded on due process under the law and a right to a speedy trial. These are things that are inherent in our Constitution and things that are part of the fabric of our country. However, many of these people who are part of gynocentrism, they focus on emotional aspects and they want to control people based on their emotions, and they want to manipulate people based on their emotions. So they come out here yelling and screaming with all their emotions and talking about how this man victimized them. But that doesn't work in a court of law, because a court of law is based on facts and not on emotion. I say most men need to start saying, and most business owners need to start taking these women into a court of law and put them in front of a judge, and there was where these cases need to be dealt with. Now, the other thing men need to do to defend themselves from this gynocentric Godzilla is to go MGTOW, at work. And going MGTOW at work means you are going to establish a hard line in the sand as it relates to your social interactions with these females. And you're not even going to say good morning to these females anymore. You're just going to come in, do your job, mind your business, and if there's something that you need from this female on the job, you're just going to keep it all work related, and you're going to minimize your interactions with this female, and you're going to minimize your contact with this female. And if you have to deal with this female in any situation, you're going to have either a supervisor present or you're going to have another female coworker present, and in some cases you're going to have a recording device recording your interaction with this female so that she has no way of making any sort of allegation against you for sexual harassment and sexual assault. And when it comes down to the workplace, the MGTOW approach is the best approach. This means you're going to, again, cut these females completely off unless it is work related. You're going to minimize your socialization, because females get their power from socializing with people, and they get their power from getting attention from people. And when you minimize those two things, you cut this female's ability to try to manipulate and control situations completely off. So you have to go MGTOW at work if you want to protect your livelihood and your ability to make money for yourself. Because when it comes down to this witch hunt is not only a threat against black men, it is also a threat against white men, Hispanic men, Asian men, men in general, regardless of religion, political affiliation, because this gynocentric Godzilla just wants to be able to have power over men and control over men, but it does not want to take responsibility for anything. The end game for this gynocentric Godzilla is to put America in a perpetual state of victimhood, where it sits there and cries and cries and cries to get its needs met, but it prevents everybody else from moving ahead, because when you have a person who's stuck in a position of a victim, all they do is wallow in self-pity and keep the whole world stagnating around them, and then nobody ever grows, nobody ever changes, and this is why men have to make efforts to go MGTOW and get away from this gynocentric Godzilla, because the more men who opt out of the system and opt for not dealing with this female are the ones who will help overthrow this gynocentric Godzilla and stop this overgrown temper tantrum turned into a witch hunt to destroy men. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my books like Stop Simping in the Workplace, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.